Should you buy the New Balance 2-Way V3? I can't lie, these feel pretty nice. Let's do it. Welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to look at the cushion, traction, support, basically all of the performance aspects that go into this shoe. But before we do that, we'll go ahead and do a quick rundown on some of the basic info first. So this is the third model to release from this New Balance 2-Way shoe line, and this has been a pretty cost-friendly line so far anyways. The V3s are going to be retailing for $120, and that's a good price point for basketball shoes. They actually did get a $10 price bump though from last year at $110, but that is still going to put them on the more affordable side of the scale, just whenever it comes to basketball shoes alone. And I didn't actually play in the first model that came out of this 2-Way line. I did pick up on the second model and tested those out last year, but whenever it comes to just the optics, I think this 2-Way V3 model is probably the nicest looking shoe so far. I didn't really like the V2s that much. This is just a really fun color scheme too though. I think New Balance calls it the gingerbread colorway, and these go hard. I already like these a ton more compared to the V2s. They were just it was more of a high top shoe, but this is more of a low profile. You're gonna get that green end on the side that's actually kind of tied into the lacing system. And then the laces have this candy cane pattern too. I did like that. But Chase's favorite part whenever we were doing our first impressions on these was the brain looking figure on the tongue. That's actually just the custom 2-Way logo. It's just in this really weird font. But I also like how the entire upper is gonna have this reindeer antler pattern too. And then on the heel they kind of top off the design with more of a simple look. You're just gonna get some stripes back there with that fuel cell text kind of built into the midsole. And we're actually about to talk about that right now, but as you can see, I'm kind of up on the appearance this year. I think they look really clean in hand. I think they look clean on foot too, but now let's go ahead and see how they play on the court. So now looking at more of the tech specs and the performance side, we'll kick it off by looking at the cushioning system first. So the 2-Way V3 is using some fuel cell foam in the midsole that is meant to deliver a propulsive feel to help drive you forward. And then going along with that, there's going to be some absorb pillars used in the heel and in the forefoot that are there to obviously kind of help absorb impact through a combination of cushioning and compression resistance. And I mean, every brand kind of has their stuff. Adidas uses a lot of Boost and Bounce. Puma has Nitro, Nike has Zoom Air, stuff like that. New Balance tends to rock with this fuel cell cushioning setup for the most part. And I know that they used it in Kawhi's signature line on the 1s and 2s. Same thing, it's the same exact cushioning setup from the V2 that they used last year, but I mean, across the board, I've kind of noticed that none of these shoes really give you the exact same feel. I thought the Kawhi 1s were a little bit more stiff than the 2s that had the same fuel cell stuff. And then, but across all the models that I played in, these might be the softest so far. I want to say that the 2-Way V3, it's probably been my favorite to play in just whenever you zero in, just on the cushioning alone. Now I would have to go back and play, I think, in my New Balance Omnis 1s. It's been forever since I put those on, but the V3s, they have a pretty nice on-court feel. The cushioning still isn't super deep, but it definitely feels like they added a few layers, or at least kind of bulked up some of that underfoot padding somehow, however they did it. But the sock liner and the surrounding parts on the upper, they're going to give you a good feel. It's honestly not going to be anything over the top, but I mean, those spots, they still are going to edge out the V2s in my opinion. Then using our durometer to check out the midsole, these are actually pretty soft, rating all the way down at a 28.5. That's definitely the softest material that New Balance has used in this midsole. And that honestly would make sense because I kind of had my reservations for this cushioning category last year, but at a minimum, these did take a step in the right direction for cushioning. So now getting into more of the materials and the support, this is a spot where New Balance actually did switch it up a little bit more compared to the cushioning. So the V2s last year were using this fit weave light upper. I think it was the same type of material that was used on the Kawhi 2s, but it just didn't feel that nice. The quality didn't seem to be there. The 2-Way V3s had this molded textile upper, and honestly, I have to kind of pause and take a step back here for this section, at least until I get a different pair if I do, because I don't want to speak on the upper material being suede or this carpet unless the other pairs had that too. I just know that this Christmas themed pair with the gingerbread and the gumdrops and the brown upper, it's pretty closed off. That's what the upper feels like. So if your foot overheats easily, or you kind of prefer mesh uppers, it just allows your foot to breathe a little easier. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend getting these shoes, or at least just this colorway. And even with the V3s being a low top model compared to the V2s being more of a mid top last year, these are still weighing 394 grams for a size 10.5. So first off, that's really good. That's super light, but even then they still are 20 grams heavier than the 2s last year. So personally, it feels like that kind of speaks to the quality of last year's model. they felt like not much was like being used in my opinion, and they weighed like not much was being used. But now we'll go ahead and come back to this model and like focus on the support. And New Balance does give you some pieces on these. You're gonna have that green New Balance logo on the upper. You can actually see the laces are kind of tied into that design, and they're kind of feeding through it. So pulling the laces tight, that just allows for the model to kind of wrap over your foot, just give you make you feel a little bit more secure within there. Then you're also gonna have that red spike to the midsole. Then that's just gonna give you a little extra lateral support. Nothing too crazy, but I made one cut that I did feel a little bit of heel slippage, but then it never happened again, so I'm not really worried about that on this model. But I mean, as for the upper, as closed off as it is, like I said, like it still isn't super like what would I say, super thick. Like it feels like it's not overly layered, so you do get some movement there, but not more than you would want. Like I still don't feel like any sliding out from under the footbed, nothing along those lines. New Balance also put in a midfoot TPU shank. That's pretty common. Like that's what a lot of like shoe brands kind of do, and that just helps make the shoe a little bit more rigid. So overall, the quality does feel like it's better on these. I think I'm more wrapping it up with the traction and taking a look at the pattern first. You're gonna have like the same kind of setup from last year, especially in the heel. It's gonna be a little bit different in the forefoot, but I mean, for the most part, I would just call this a random traction pattern. And it's gonna be made out of the same material that they used on the V2s, is what it feels like. And that is not a problem at all, because the traction was hands down like the best aspect of the two-way V2s. And this is going to be right there pretty much the same way on this year's V3 model. Like doing our squeak test, you can just hear these making a ton of noise. Obviously, that is not the end-all be-all, but they do just translate onto the court really well. And you're going to get the occasional slipping if they get too dusty. Normally that does happen with like some stickier models, but the grooves are pretty deep, so they should last well outdoors. And the impact protection is nice too, so they would have you more than covered. Honestly, this is a good shoe to consider using outdoors, especially at the price range. But to finish off with the sizing, this is going to be a perfect true to size fit. Like you're going to get a standard, it's pretty standard for the width. I wouldn't call these narrow, but half a thumb's width left over for the length. Not a ton of room, but that's kind of how I prefer it. So overall, the New Balance two-way V3, it kind of won me back a little bit after the V2s. I don't want to bag on that shoe. I know a lot of people liked it. I just didn't prefer it. But the cushion on these, it does feel a little bit better. And I like the low top look. And I mean, the traction, of course, it's on point. So should you buy the New Balance two-way V3, honestly, you can't go wrong with them at 120 bucks. I'm in. Thank you guys for taking some time to watch. Feel free to throw us a follow or sub if you like this video. And if you're interested in buying these shoes and you want to support our channel, just click the link here on screen, or we have links down below or in our bio. Feel free to check that out. But until next review, I'm Landon from Shoewear. Peace.